Hello, welcome to Mike's Best Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Pishota. Happy Wednesday to you. And the Mets won a wild one last night over the Chicago White Sox, 11-10. This was a game that the Mets did their level best to try and blow. They made it really goddamn close for everybody. This was it looked like a blowout for most of this game until it got pretty uncomfortably close in the later innings. The Mets would give up 5 runs in the 7th inning to the White Sox, all of a sudden making it an 11-9 game, and then got even closer in the 9th inning when they allowed another run to score, making it 11-10. They were finally able to close it off with David Robertson getting the save, but this was a game where the Mets should have comfortably led without any real difficulty for the majority of it, and this was decisions made by Buck Showalter to allow some of the lesser Met relievers to come in a game where they were so comfortably far ahead that I guess the hope was I would need to use any of my primary relievers and keep everybody from coming into this game. Ultimately, this was an issue where Carlos Carrasco, who started the game, left somewhat early. He left in the 5th inning, resulting in Grant Harvey having to come in, and then Trevor Gott, and then you had Brooks Raley and Abadavino coming in. Gott would do absolutely nothing for the Mets in this game. He would get 0 outs, allowing 2 earned runs, 3 of which came in. He gave up 3 base hits. Just a terrible performance from him when he arrived on the game. And this is basically pretty much on brand for Gott as he's come up. And he's had some decent performances, but for the most part, he's been pretty underwhelming for pretty much the entire time he's been up here. So it was a really ugly performance from Trevor Gott, resulting in Brooks Raley having to come in and try and finish out the day. Trying to finish out the inning, and then Abadavino coming in, and then David Robertson coming in the 9th inning. But Robertson getting into his own share of trouble. This was very much a game where I was like, kind of watching it through my fingers, oh God, no, oh no, they're going to blow this game, oh, and it got so close and so very, very close for a game that they were so far ahead for most of this, but pretty much by the skin of their teeth, they eked it out, and this is a game, the Chicago White Sox, who probably rivaled the Mets for worst starts of the season. With the exception being that the Chicago White Sox, no one really had any major expectations for them. I think most people had rejected the White Sox as being, a top 15 team with a good chance of coming ahead in the very weak AL Central. But they've gotten off to a terrible start. A lot of players not playing up to their ability. Starting pitchers kind of already throwing in the towel. Kind of similar to the New York Mets this year. And so we have a lot to identify with the Chicago White Sox. There's some good players on the White Sox. I've always liked Eloy Jimenez, and Luis Robert Jr. Is clearly one of the rising stars of baseball. Is going to be a huge star in the American League for the foreseeable future. And but they have a lot. There's a lot of veterans on that team. They have not played up to par. They've had dealt with injuries. The pitching staff has really underwhelmed. We saw Lucas Giolito, who had started the game for the White Sox last night, and Giolito has had plenty of success. He had a really bad 2022, and then started off this year in pretty much the same shape. He's kind of righted himself recently. Last night, though, he looked very bad, was giving up home runs left and right, which we'll go into in a little bit. But the White Sox, in large part, have really underwhelmed, even more so than the Mets. They are now 16 games under 500, I think, maybe 15. And it's pretty shocking how badly they have played. And this was a game that the Mets led 5-0 after the first inning. He allowed 5 runs to Giolito. And
when you saw the big lead that the Mets had built up early on, and you know that Carlos Carrasco is going to be pitching this game for the Mets, you know really at that point that, okay, it's unlikely that he's going to pitch really well in this game. And Carlos Carrasco is the guy who, if the Mets do nothing, by the trade deadline, if they do nothing else but the trade deadline, getting rid of Carlos Carrasco and sending him as far away from this team as possible would be a enormous success. That's addition by subtraction. Like, that is literally get rid of this guy who has been so unbelievably terrible. And if anybody who's like a Carrasco defender wants to come in and say like, oh, well, he's had some his good moments, I fully agree. He's had his moments where he's had flashes where he'll throw like 8 innings against the Arizona Diamondbacks or whatever it is. Like, it's those brief flashes where he like all of a sudden kind of rights himself and he looks competent. He's throwing 95 miles an hour. It is not enough to outweigh how terrible he has been all year round, which is just a complete mess. There is nothing really to say about anything he's done, really. Like, there are no positives I've been able to glean from his overall performance this season, which has been a dismal failure. I outlined that in my podcast last time, going over how well he pitched and how I graded his pitching performance for the first half of the season. He's been wildly disappointing. His performance today, Showalter had to pull him early in because he was in the middle of collapsing again in the fifth inning. Couldn't get through the fifth inning. Doesn't get the win for this performance where the Mets put in all this offensive work because he couldn't muster enough to get through the fifth inning. And Showalter having to pull him before the game was getting a little out of control at that point. Let's talk about the Mets offense, though. Let's not dwell on the inadequacies of the Mets pitching staff. Let's talk about how well this offense played last night. And again, against an underwhelming pitcher, a guy who's been kind of hit or miss this season, but was pitching fairly well the last 5 starts. I was looking at his last 5 starts. Was looking sharp. Had lowered the ERA down to like the mid 3s, and that's kind of like where his career average stands. So I was like, okay, this guy could probably give the Mets a run for their money, particularly how well or how not well the Mets offense was playing in that series against the Dodgers, where they were barely eking out any offense against the Los Angeles Dodgers. But coming into a series against the White Sox, you're like, okay, like maybe they could muster something up, but I didn't know if they were going to be doing it against Lucas Giolito. As it turned out, the Mets offense was perfectly fine, going ape all over him, starting off with a Nimmo walk in the first, and then Tommy Pham hitting that RBI double that would score Nimmo from first. And then Lindor walking, Alonso hitting the sac fly, and McNeil, of course, would strike out. And then we had Francisco Alvarez launching his first home run of the game, followed very quickly afterwards by Brett Beatty homering right after that. And this was like, I'm glad that they've structured the lineup now to have Alonso, McNeil, Alvarez, and McNeil sandwiched in between Alonso and Alvarez makes the most sense for this lineup because ostensibly Alvarez should give McNeil the protection because everyone is looking at Alvarez as just a big a threat right now as Alonso. You have to. I mean, he is a home run hitting machine. He might catch Alonso at the rate that Alonso has been slumping recently because you're looking at the home run numbers that he has. That was his 18th home run. Later on in the game, he would hit his 19th. It was yet another 2 home run game from Alvarez. He has 19 home runs. He really is right on Pete's heels. I mean, Pete only has 26 at this point, and I wouldn't have guessed that Alonso, who was hitting really well going into June, and had plenty of home runs occurred at that point. I had no idea that Alvarez would be like this close, be within 7 home runs of his home run total at this point in the season. So Alvarez has been just wildly impressive, and you're looking at him again. It's just a rookie, but this is just he's having an outstanding season. Even the struggles that he has had, which is he's had trouble getting on base. He's not walking really enough. In this game, he walked twice though. I was happy to see that from him. McNeil, even though he got the strikeout in the early in that first inning, and he was none too pleased about that. He would come back and actually get 2 hits in this game. He was 2 for 5, drove in a pair, which I was happy to see from McNeil. He certainly needed a 2-hit game. Tommy Pham, as he has been all season long, was again raking hits across the board, along with the RBI double. He would also get another hit on top of that. And I like to see how much the Mets were walking in this game. This was one where if there's one drawback to this team offensively, it is the fact that their at-bats have been just terrible. I mean, I've looked at them and they're just wildly striking out. It's just a lot of easy fly balls, fly outs. I'm like, be a little bit more conservative at the plate. Try and draw a walk every once in a while. And it's Nimmo's game, but no one else has really kind of followed suit, unfortunately, which I would prefer rather than them continuing this very stupid approach at the plate. And I don't know if Eric Chavez has decided to kind of change things up recently, but they have been walking more recently. I don't know if that was a command that he got from the front office, or maybe he had consulted with Showalter and said if this team continues to play so badly at the plate, they just continue to have these terrible at bats. Maybe we need to change things up, and maybe they have to start taking more pitches and. Glean from that what you will. The Beatty home run was his only hit in this game, and that's kind of been par for Beatty for the most part, and that's just basically what you expect with Brett Beatty at this point, who he cannot get consistently where he needs to be. I did like what I saw in his home run, which was just like a golf shot. He absolutely crushed it, though, dead center. No chance for anybody to catch that one, and it was pleasant to see because Beatty has just not really had a chance to really flash too much of his power. So I would like him to kind of, gather some momentum behind that. Find your power stroke, kid. Find it, because we've seen what he can do in AAA, and AAA might be like Coors Field as far as I know, but he has the tools. He has the batting approach. He is just completely fallen apart at the plate at the major league level, and chalk that up to maybe struggles at the just kind of adapting. But Alvarez hasn't had any of those troubles, so it's figure out what exactly is going on with it and try to course correct as much as possible at this point, Brett Beatty. But I was happy to see him get the home run. And then lastly, I want to talk about the guy who hit his first home run as a Met this season, and that is DJ Stewart. And if you're like, DJ Stewart is not a name I'm familiar with, join the club. DJ Stewart, no one really knows who he is. DJ Stewart had played on the Baltimore Orioles for a number of years. The Mets had picked him up. He was playing in AAA. He started off the season in AAA, to my knowledge, pretty slow. But he's picked up momentum since then. He had talked about bringing in a whole new batting approach in an interview he gave recently, and it included a toe tap that he does now that helps him with his pitch timing, and it resulted in him having a terrific June. And the Mets called him up at AAA because they need some kind of help in the offense. They were like, maybe this guy, this sort of journeyman role player can kind of find something going on and maybe help out this offense. So we hadn't seen too much from DJ for the most part. Since he's come up, he's had a couple starts, but he hasn't really done anything of note. He comes into this one getting the start. He's in the 9th spot and absolutely tattooed a home run off of Lucas Giolito, which was, I think, a changeup, and he crushed it. It was 435 feet. It was just a hanging changeup. Giolito left over the plate, and DJ Stewart absolutely annihilated it. And maybe a sign of things to come. I really can't say. Can't, I'm not going to try and guess which role player is going to have like a breakout season. It's almost impossible. It's really much a gamble as to what's going to happen. So you could say that DJ Stewart's going to have a great season. Who knows? Maybe you might be right. You might be wrong. DJ Stewart though, they need some help. He's a left-handed hitting power hitter. Daniel Vogelbach has pretty much like ceded that role. It's like an audition process at this point as to like who can take over that spot, because he can't. It's pretty clear. I mean, Vogelbach's had some like successes recently, and he's a little bit more a little more comfortable at the plate. I don't know what the power outage explanation could be for this guy. I mean, other than maybe he like lost too much weight. I don't know, but like he really changed up his approach when he came to New York, and all of a sudden he was playing, much more conservative at the plate. He's drawing more walks. I don't have a problem drawing walks, but you're here to be the designated hitter. That's largely your job, is to sort of be an offensive force. And other than the walking, he was just basically just striking out for the most part. So he hasn't really done anything with any kind of offensive positivity. So I'm like, someone if someone else can come in and do what he has to do. I don't mean like dump Vogelbach or anything like that, because I really like Vogelbach. I think he's a great clubhouse guy. He's one of those glue like clubhouse guys who if you deal that guy away, people are going to start to feel a little, the morale will be a little bit low over in that place. So I think, keep Vogelbach around, but I just don't know if he can beat the starting DH for this team anymore. It might be a guy you have to come off the bench for the spot starter every once in a while, maybe to spell Alonso. But that's really all I can say for that. So DJ Stewart, maybe some things to come. Who knows? But this was an encouraging win for the most part. I was happy to see the Mets stick it out and hold on to it. This was basically the worst part of the series, to my guess, because Carlos Carrasco, by far the Mets' worst starter this season, and you could say David Pearson also, but for the guy who's been up there the longest, he just has not had any real success. So Carrasco, as I said before, get him as far away from this team as possible. Tonight we have Justin Verlander, and the tale of which Justin Verlander is going to show up. We get to see it again. He looked terrible in the Dodgers game. Walked 6 batters. No one seems to really know what's going on with Verlander, who's either so far in his head at this point and feeling the pressure of his contract that he can't seem to sort of recover. I mean, to start off the second half of the season with that performance against the Dodgers was beyond ugly. He has to right himself, because as I said in my last episode, he's pitching like a third or fourth starter, and they're paying him $43 million. Not walking 6 batters would be an encouraging sign. I would also say if he hasn't given up any home runs, that would also be an encouraging sign. So limit the walks and the home runs, and there's a good chance that he might look pretty good in this game. So hard to say. We don't really know what we're going to get with the White Sox. They scored 10 runs in this game. If Verlander can keep it under control and sort of find his groove, which he has flashed at different points in the season that he might kind of be like figuring it out. If he can get back into that kind of groove and look that way against the White Sox, we might have 3 in a row. The Mets have a good chance to get some momentum going. July has seen the Mets actually win some games. It's a good sign. I would like them to keep that up, particularly against the teams which they should be winning against, which is a bad White Sox team, so they should really be winning this series, and they certainly have the advantage with Verlander on the mound on paper. It's just a matter of which Verlander is actually going to show up.
Thank you for listening to Mike's Mets podcast. Please be sure to follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Finally, please also follow the podcast Twitter, which is Mike's Mets Pod, all one word. Appreciate your time and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Let's go, Mets.